What's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another video. And if you're trying to sell your art, in this video I'm going to talk about 5 tips for selling more art, and it's going to be minded or aimed towards people who sell at different art fairs and events, because that's what I'm more experienced in. So I'm going to give you 5 tips. They're not always easy to apply. Some of them are easier than others, but I think you're going to love them. So tip number 1, engage and be present. Okay, so when you're there, maybe you have a booth, maybe you have this table, you want to make sure that you're present there and you allow people to approach you, that you're approachable. And there are many of ways of doing this. It's sometimes in the body language, it's not just, the way you sit or what you do. But from my personal experience, when I am walking down the local fair here, I see a lot of people that kind of they seem too laid back and they don't seem like they want contact with the environment. Now, it's okay not to, you don't want to be too aggressive, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment, but you do want to make sure that you're at least there and you show your presence. So I like to stand up, I like when people see me, but I won't be too intrusive when someone comes over to my table. I'm going to give them time to look, but I will show that I'm there. Okay, I will try not to be on my phone too much, unless it feels like the right, like in the moment it feels right and people can see that you're available, and that's cool. Okay, but that's the first thing. So to be more inviting, smile, show yourself, show that you're there, and don't kind of hide back. A lot of people I see walk around between booths and talk to their friends, which is cool, but you kind of want to make sure that you're present there. Okay, so that's first. Tip number 2, balance being laid back and pushy. Okay, I mentioned this very briefly. What this means is I can see, for the most part, 2 parts of artists. More people fall into the first category, which is being too laid back. So a lot of people seem like they just kind of sit there and they wait for a person to come with an item and tell them, I want to buy this. If someone's just browsing, they will ignore them. They will kind of let them do their thing. To an extent, it's okay to, you don't want to engage necessarily every single person who's looking. Some people are just browsing for fun, and you can tell that with time and experience. But you also don't want to be on the other end of just waiting, sitting there waiting for something to happen, or at least not asking questions. If you see that someone's been, looking at stuff, you can ask them questions. Is there something specific you're looking for? Maybe a gift, So you want to make sure that you balance it out. You're not too laid back that you ignore every person who is looking at your stuff, but then you don't want to be too aggressive. And I have seen some people that are a little too aggressive in that you just look at their work and they immediately bombard you with tons of useless information that you don't really care about. Like if I didn't ask any question, it's obvious I'm just getting the general impression of what you're doing. Maybe I don't want to feel trapped, okay? And some artists make you feel trapped. You want to avoid that. So you want to balance these two, okay? Now, tip number 3, which is, I think, the most important, probably one of the most important ones, but all of these are equally important, is create conversations and tell stories. So stories is, if someone's taking interest in your art, you want to give them reason to buy it, okay? Because sometimes the person will show interest, but they're looking for that excuse or that reason to buy it, and that's where you come in. So for example, what characterizes my work is that a lot of it has been done on location. And that's much more authentic than studio work. And maybe if I'm an artist and I create the same painting over and over and over again inside the studio, that's very different from if I actually have paintings that were done on that specific location, especially if you're a tourist. That's what you're looking for. You want that thing, that real piece of the place you visited. Okay, so if I paint this famous street or just even a small alley, knowing that I was there is a big, big thing for people, which is why I tell the story of that painting. This I did back then. This I painted in the rain. This is the view from outside my studio. People want to hear these. This is the street where I live. People love to hear these stories. Now, you want to make conversations as well. I put these together because it's all about the interaction. So if someone says, the easiest thing, if someone says, I'm looking for a gift, you ask more details about who. You ask them where they're from. That's a lighthearted question, which is nice. If you're, depending on the venue, of course, it may be a very local thing, and then asking them where they're all from the same place, is useless. For me, where I sell my art, it's a very touristy area, so there's a lot of people from different places. 70% probably of my sales are to tourists. So I do ask where you're from, and obviously if they don't speak Hebrew, means they're probably not from here. Sometimes they are though, so don't assume. But it's very interesting because from that conversation, I had many sales that the person or the people initially looked like they had a very light interest in what I did, and then we started talking and we found some commonalities, and it just like nothing that has to do almost with the art while they're browsing the art, and then suddenly they go, I want this one. And it's like, if I hadn't talked to them, I wouldn't have gotten there. And so many people don't do this. They don't, like, you're there, you're sitting there, why not try and do more to sell? I mean, you're already there. There is no excuse not to do that. Okay, so that's another tip. Now, tip number 4. You want to price your work in a very clear and unified manner. That's what I think. Now, I'm still experimenting with pricing. I've tried increasing them, lowering them, seeing what happens. But what I think should be there is at least some kind of logic, meaning you want to make sure that if possible, for example, all your paintings that are this size should cost this much, and all the paintings that are this size should cost this much. There should be some logic, and it's also for you, so that it's easier for you to remember what everything costs. Now, of course, some paintings took longer than others. Some paintings you think are better than others. You can feel free to have some variation, but there should be some kind of logic behind it. And also, I think you should price accordingly to the venue. So if you're creating very expensive items that most people aren't looking for necessarily in that kind of venue, then maybe it's time to change the items you produce. And I have I don't romanticize the exact type of art that I do, or it should be this particular thing or that. I'm fine with doing things that match the venue. Okay, so if my larger paintings are too expensive to sell there, I'll just make smaller ones, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Okay, now the last tip number 5, and this is really important, is you have to accept credit cards, and you have to accept as many payment options as possible. Okay, people pay with credit card, with cash, with Apple Pay, with debit cards, with everything. You want to make sure that you're able to accept every kind of payment, because what happens is, first off, many people just prefer to pay with credit card. I am currently, the statistic shows that a slightly larger amount of people buy with credit card with me than with cash, but it's pretty equal. It's like 60-40, something like that. It was very equal then, more credit cards than the last time I was there, but for the most part, it's pretty equal. So that's 50% of people that prefer to pay with credit card or don't have the cash. That's the second main point I was getting at. If you're selling high ticket items that are a little more expensive, there is a high probability the person buying from you won't have the necessary amount of cash. So even if they want to buy the item, they can't if you don't accept credit cards. So that's a real problem that I think friction is a killer of sales. Okay, you want to make sure to eliminate every type of friction possible. And what's the worst type of friction? Sorry about the siren. What's the worst type of friction? Logistical friction that you could have taken care of. Okay, that's packaging, that's the way you give them the bag and the receipt and the accepting every different payment option. Okay, that's the things you want to completely eliminate and don't have these to be the problem. The bigger, let's say, resistance to buying, or maybe a person doesn't like the price, that's cool, but don't lose sales over such trivial things. Okay, so these are my 5 tips. I'm going to go over all of them just to make sure you remember. First is engage and be present. Okay, you want to make sure people see you, people know they can approach you. That's first. Number 2, you want to make sure you balance the being too laid back or too pushy. You don't want to be neither one of those. Okay, 3 is tell stories and make conversations. 4 is very clear and visible pricing system. And 5, accept every payment option in the world, preferably. Okay, so I hope you found these tips useful. Again, these are mostly for events, but you could apply them even to selling your art online. Okay, depending on how you tell your stories via social media and how you post them and what you say about them, that really will affect how they are received. Okay, but in any case, this is it for today. Let me know in a comment down below what type of tip helped you the most, or what kind of thing you try when you sell your artworks and helps you sell more. Let's open up a conversation in the comments. I'm really interested to hear what you have to say. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you still haven't. I have tons of other videos like this one talking about the business of art, selling, then creativity, productivity, and then also full creation processes, painting, drawing, sketching, whatever it is. Thank you so much, and I will see you again in another vid real soon.